Hi guys, this is Janaye of Janaye Elizabeth Media. This is a 22-minute retouching tutorial that will go over some tools for Photoshop CS6 for Mac. Many of the techniques I'm going to show you are intermediate, so anyone with a basic knowledge of Photoshop and who is looking for some improved technique and shortcuts will be able to benefit from this video. The first thing that you'll notice is that all of my palettes are set to the left, next to my toolbar. I learned this workflow technique from Christy Schuler at christyschuler.com. If you want to save this workspace, arrange your palettes how you would like them. Then go to Window, Workspace, and you'll see that I've named mine to left and that it is in use, and click New Workspace to name and save the arrangement. What you see now is the before of my image. I'm going to walk you through the steps that it will take to get to this after version. The techniques that I'm going to show you today are how to properly use the Liquefy tool, retouching using clone and heal, dodging and burning without the dodge and burn tool, using curves for exposure, using curves for skin tone, correcting colors using the brush tool, the hue saturation tool, and lastly, how to sharpen an image using Unsharp mask. The first technique that I want to share with you today is how to use the Liquefy tool. First thing you want to do is make a copy of your original file by using Command J. This duplicates the layer. Rename this layer to Liquefy. The Liquefy tool is under the Filters menu. You can quickly zoom in and out of the image by using Command plus or minus. As well, in the Liquefy tool and in the rest of Photoshop, the brush can be resized by using the bracket keys. The brush can also be resized by using the Tool Options panel. Use a larger brush to prevent a rippling effect, and either push or pull on areas. I'm going to use the Liquefy tool to very subtly shape her arms and to help straighten out her posture. This tool can, of course, be used to make models appear physically skinnier, but it's great for subtler effects as well. And I'm going to click Cancel because I liquefied a layer earlier for you. So here's a quick before and after so you can see that the changes that we made. Liquefy can also be used for smaller regions. When liquefying a smaller region, use the Marquee tool to select an area. In this case, her nose. And use Command J to make that selection into a new layer. Make sure you rename the layer. I'm going to call it Nose. And go back to the Liquefy tool in the Filters menu. I'm going to use the Liquefy tool to help straighten her nose by clicking inside the bump and pulling in. This will help avoid moving the eye pixels and concentrate the movements to just that bump. And again, I'm going to click Cancel because I liquefied her nose on a separate layer earlier. The next technique I want to show you is retouching with the healing brush and clone stamp. These are both good tools for getting rid of various blemishes, but are useful in different situations. You want to retouch on a blank layer, so use Shift-Command-N to open up the New Layer dialog. Name your layer, and you won't need to change the blend mode or the opacity, and click OK. First tool that I'm going to show you is the healing brush. which can be opened by clicking J. The healing brush works by replacing bad texture with good texture selected from another area. The secondary texture is blended with the bad area's color and brightness value to create a seamless fix. The healing brush works best on areas with similar texture and tonality, like this wall. Select the area to use for healing by holding Option and clicking on that area. Make sure your brush is set to sample from current and below, since we're working on a blank layer. Simply brush over the blemishes that you wish to remove. The brush size can be adjusted with the bracket tool or by holding Control, Option, and dragging your mouse left and right for size, or up and down for softness and hardness. New areas can be selected by using the Option key and clicking on the new area to sample from. The Clone tool, which can be opened by clicking S, copies exact pixels from one area to another and is better for precision areas where the Heal tool can often become messy. Use the Option key and click in the area that you want to clone from. Many times you will want to use the Clone tool at its full opacity. Opacity can be changed by using the number keys on your keyboard. 0 will set the opacity to 100%. 1 will set the opacity to 10%, 2 to 20%, 3 to 30%, and so on. Clicking 2 keys in a row will set that percentage. Use Option to select new areas while working and change the opacity to help achieve the look that you want. The next technique is one that I use for almost every image, and that is dodge and burn. The problem with the actual dodge and burn tool is that it can affect the colors in an image and lends to destroying pixels. I'm going to teach you a non-destructive method of dodging and burning an image. Use Shift-Command-N to create a new layer. Name that layer Dodge and Burn, and set the blend mode to Soft Light. Check the box for Fill with 50% Gray, and click OK. You now have a layer that looks invisible but responds to painting with black and white. Open the brush tool by clicking B. Click D to reset the brush colors to black and white, and use X to toggle between the two colors. Remember that you can use Control Option in your mouse to change the size and hardness of the brush you're using, and the number keys to change your opacity. This tool is great for helping to close pores and to even out skin. I'm going to paint this small dark patch on her forehead with white to help even out that area. And I'll use white in this shadow on her cheek. This tool is also great for contouring and shaping. I'm going to use white on her cheekbones to help bring them forward and a little bit of black underneath, just like you might use for makeup. I'll add a little black to the side of her nose and darken her hairline subtly to alter her face shape. I'll also add some under her chin to make her face pop a little bit more. Just by turning that layer on and off, we can see how her face shape has changed slightly, just by selectively contouring and highlighting. Now I'll turn on the dodge and burn layer that I made earlier, and you can see an even more noticeable change. You'll see that I evened out the shadows under her arm, made her arm look skinnier by adding shadow along the edges and a highlight down the center, and changed the shape of her face and added light to her eyes. Here's another look at the before so you can note the changes. The next technique that I want to share with you is using the Curves tool for exposure. In the Adjustments panel, click on the Curves icon. This will open up the Curves tool. Make sure the Targeted Adjustment tool is turned on. and click on a midtone in the image. Drag your mouse up or down to adjust the curve. Click in a shadow to add a point to the curve, and use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move the point up or down. I'm going to delete this layer and turn on a curves layer that I made earlier. By turning this layer on and off, you can see what the overall exposure of the image has changed. Now I want to show you how to use the same tool, but for skin tone. I've already created a curves layer using the adjustment panel. As well, I've already selected a point and a diffused highlight, which is important for accurate skin tone numbers. As you can see, the point I selected is in a highlight that is diffused and not specular, like the highlights underneath her eye or along her nose. The area is also relatively even in tonality. Turn on the Targeted Adjustment tool and shift-click in the selected point. This will set the point on the curve for every color channel. You can navigate through these channels using Option 3 for red, Option 4 for green, and Option 5 for blue. Open up your Info panel and you'll see the color readings for point 1, which is the point that we just set. The point needs to be set to CMYK, which can be done by clicking on the eyedropper next to the point number and choosing CMYK from the flyout menu. A good rule of thumb for skin color is that cyan should be 1/5 to 1/3 of what the magenta and yellow channels are, or that the magenta and yellow channels are 3 to 5 times the cyan channel. Magenta and yellow should be within just a few points of each other. I'll leave these rules and a color wheel up while we adjust the color. Use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move the points in each channel up and down to adjust them. I'm aiming for cyan to be about 10%, so I'm going to want to remove some of the red. Because cyan is 10%, I'm going to aim for my magenta to be about 30%, so I'm going to want to remove some of the green. And lastly, I want yellow to be within a few points of magenta, so I'm going to add blue to bring that yellow percentage down. If we toggle the layer on and off, we can see a subtle change to the skin color. This is a good technique for global skin color. Using multiple layers with masking will be the most accurate way to get proper skin tones across the whole body. Now I'm going to show you how to use the brush tool with the color blend mode layer to adjust colors, in this case, skin tone. This should mostly be used to fix skin tones in areas like shadows, which can have a different color shift than highlighted skin. Start by creating a new layer using Shift-Command-N. Name the layer Color Brush and change the blend mode to Color. Using the eyedropper tool, or holding Shift while in brush mode, pick a color from her skin. Sometimes I like to open the color picker tool and pick a slightly warmer than the one that I grabbed with the eyedropper. Then, using your brush tool at a low opacity, brush over the areas you would like to add color to. I'm going to add some warmth to the shadows and a little bit of warmth across her back and arms, and just a touch to her face. If you look at the shadow under her arm, you'll notice that the shadow becomes warmer when I turn the color layer on. The next tool I want to talk about is the Hue Saturation tool. In the Adjustments panel, click on Hue Saturation. Rather than saturating all of the colors, turn on the Targeted Adjustment tool and click in a region of the photo. This will select a single color range. In this case, because we're clicking on her lips, the reds. Clicking and dragging the mouse left and right will affect the saturation of that color range. This affected just a single color in the image, but it still affected the entire image. We want to just saturate the lips, so we're going to select the mask on that layer and click Command-I to invert the mask. Then, use the brush tool on white to paint over the regions that you want the saturation to take effect. I'm going to paint over her lips. When I turn the layer on and off, you can see that her lips now have more color to them, but the rest of the image remains unaffected. I'm going to go back and use a low opacity brush to add just a little bit of color to her cheeks. And we'll turn the layer off and on again. And you see we just added a little bit more of a rosy glow to her face. Now I'm going to turn on a curves layer that I made earlier to reduce the contrast and up the overall exposure of the image. Finally, I'm going to show you how to sharpen an image. Sharpening has to occur on a pixel layer, and so far we've made a bunch of adjustment layers. I'm going to click on the topmost layer and use Shift, Option, Command, E to create a top merged pixel layer. I still have all of my layers underneath, but now I have a nice top layer that I can add sharpening to. I'll rename that layer, then go to Filter, Sharpen, and Unsharp Mask. I'm going to move the preview window to her eye, since that is the part that I want the sharpest. If we click on the image, or toggle the preview on and off, we can see the effect that the sharpening is having. The radius will affect how wide the sharpening ring around each pixel is. The threshold limits sharpening between pixels that are within the number of levels chosen to each other. But I don't want sharpening on the whole image. I want her skin to still look soft. So I'm going to click the Mask tool at the bottom of the Layers palette and use Command-I again to inverse the mask. Then I'll use the Brush tool on white to show the sharpening on the eyes, the lips, and I'll use a lower opacity to show some of the sharpening on her hair. If we turn the layer on and off, you'll notice, especially in her lips, the effect that sharpening has. And we're done with the image. Here's the image before we made our adjustments. And here's an after using all of the tools that I went over today. Thank you for watching this retouching tutorial. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment or to contact me through my blog at janayeelizabethmedia.tumblr.com.